When it comes to baseball, you've got big market teams that make big market moves. See the Yankees trading for Anthony Rizzo. See the Dodgers pulling off a massive deal to bring in both Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. The champs are trying to repeat. They're a big market team doing big market things. Exactly what the hell you would expect them to be doing in that type of position and situation. And then you've got big market teams that do small market things. And for years, you could certainly lob that criticism at Jerry Reinsdorf and the Chicago White Sox, the incessant bitching about, oh, we're a small market team. You're in the third biggest city in the country. Shut up. I don't care if you got the Cubs on the north side and you feel like they dominate the media coverage there. Give me a break. I get plenty of Sox fans. Stop acting like you're a small market team. But even the White Sox this year, when they're in position as a contender, they made some big moves before the deadline. They're actually doing big market type of things. And then there's the Chicago Cubs. Now, let it be known that a decade ago, when Cubs fans were being idiots about an Alfonso Soriano-led team being some type of contender or just make these moves, I was sitting there very early, before it was cool or popular to do so, to say, you need to fire Sale. You need to tear this thing down, damn it. You need to go get Theo. You need to completely blow this thing up and start over the right way. Because this half-ass way of doing it, having a top 10 to 13 payroll for middling to just above middling level talent, ain't getting the damn job done. So when it's right and it's appropriate, I'm totally on board with the fire sale stuff. I'm totally on board with the tear it down, the tank, the rebuild. See my tweets about the Chicago Bears, like even the Bulls, and certainly history with the Cubs. Like, yeah. So you can miss me with all that, oh, he's just emotionally reacting because he doesn't like that they traded away a bunch of their notable guys from the World Series championship team. Give me a break. You can miss me with all that. But there's no question. Now, this past couple of days has been pretty rough for all of us Cubs fans, hasn't it? We've known for a little while this was coming. We've dealt with the specter of this being a possibility. We knew no matter what that in all likelihood, this was going to be the last season of this core being together, and we didn't really like where this team was headed. You know, you have one last chance really with this core before you have Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez all head into free agency. You know you're pretty much done with it after this year. So you're expecting them, hey, let's take one last run at it. Let's take the core that should have won multiple World Series but only won one and see if you can potentially win a second one. You know, that kind of big market mentality, big market moves, big market things type of stuff that broke-ass Tom Ricketts isn't going to do. Going to try and sell you that marquee network, though. So once they didn't do that, you knew this potential was coming, and especially as you got into the season and the Cubs started losing a bunch of games, you knew this was coming. But it doesn't mean that it's not painful. And there's nothing wrong with you feeling emotions about this. There's nothing wrong about this being painful to you. Because it is. It is certainly a painful thing. Is it one of the most painful experiences of my lifetime as a Chicago/Illinois sports fan? No. The Bulls dynasty being broken up in January of '99 in the span of less than 2 weeks after they were the 3-time defending NBA champions is probably still the most painful thing. Second, November 1st, 1999, Sweetness passing away. Illinois losing to North Carolina in the 2005 National Championship game. Game 7 of the 2003 NLCS, October 15th, 2003. Some of you are going to say, well, what about Game 6 and Bartman and blah, 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 blah. The reality is the Cubs pissed away a 3-1 series lead. They still had a chance to win in Game 7. And in fact, after Kerry Wood's 3-run homer, if you remember early on in the game, they were up 5-3. And watching as you got Zambrano and Clement sitting there in the bullpen ready to go, and you got Dusty Trots out, Dave Veers, and Mark Guthrie. That's pain. Just like the pain before that season began, where you talk about big market teams doing small market things. They decided instead of giving Pudge Rodriguez $10 million for 1 year, which is what he wanted, they refused to give it because the Tribune Corporation couldn't afford it. They couldn't find a way when they knew they had a chance to do something special. So you trotted out Damian Miller and Paul Bacco as your catcher tandem. You had to watch as Pudge comes into Wrigley and helps clinch the NLCS on your home field. That's pain. Now look at October 6, 1993, Michael Jordan's first retirement, where he had to walk away from a team that he just led to 3 straight NBA championships in order to save the universe from the basketball-playing aliens called the Monstars. It was documented in the true story, greatest movie ever made, greatest documentary ever done, greatest story ever told, Space Jam, and there's only one of them. You can eat a bag of dicks if you don't believe me. I mean, you're going to say, well, what about the Bears Super Bowl 41 loss? Nah. You know, I spent that whole season preparing for that disappointment. I knew that was coming. When you have time to prepare yourself for it, it's not quite as disappointing. It doesn't hurt as much. It still hurts, but it doesn't hurt as much. Like, anybody that thought that that team was going to win a Super Bowl with Rex Grossman as their starting quarterback was disconnected from reality to begin with. And especially once Tommy Harris and Mike Brown were out of action for the rest of the year. It was over. It was a wrap. And I knew it. I spent months talking about it back then. I knew it. But even though I've had time to plan and prepare for this for a while, knowing this was coming, like, it still hurts. Like Chris Bryant, you know, first round pick. He's the guy that comes in. He's the 2015 Rookie of the Year, 2016 MVP. You know, he was part of the World Series championship team. You know, he was an integral key part of the core. One of the best draft picks in organization history, especially over the past 20 to 30 years. Are you crazy? Like, he came in with big expectations, and he certainly delivered to most, if not all of them. Javier Baez, one of the few first-round picks that Jim Hendry absolutely got right. And ironically enough, it was at the very, very end of his tenure as Chicago Cubs general manager. But Javi Baez and all the excitement that he brought to the game and the fun that he had. I'm going to miss Almago, and, you know, like, certainly wouldn't be opposed to them bringing him back once the season is over. But then you've got Anthony Rizzo. Anthony Rizzo was the start of that rebuild. He was the first key piece. He was the franchise player. He was the player, the foundation stone. He was the everything that title team ultimately was built around. Like, Anthony Rizzo is one of the greatest Chicago Cubs of all time because of that. Anthony Rizzo will go down in history as one of the most beloved Chicago Cubs of all time. Anthony Rizzo absolutely should have his number retired at the end of his playing career because he merits it and deserves it because of what he represented in the trade for him, getting him, sending Cashner to the Padres, bringing him in. Like, that changed everything. Like, that was the first piece. Everything else was brought in to complement him. Everything else was built around him. He was the leader, the heart, and the soul. So yeah, it's painful to see a Chris Bryant go to the Giants, to see Javier Baez go to the Mets, to see, you know, Anthony Rizzo in pinstripes for the New York Yankees. God, that's painful. But at the end of the day, it was technically the right decision because this team wasn't contending. You had all three of these marquee guys in contract years. 'Tis better to do something now to get something back for him than potentially risk losing some, if not all of them, in free agency because Tom Ricketts' ass is going to be too cheap to want to pony up the dough for him. My knock on this, if anything, is that if you're going to rebuild, then you go all the way. Why is Wilson Contreras still a Chicago Cub? Why is Kyle Hendricks still a Chicago Cub? You could have went into the market and gotten a good return on both of these guys. Now, you got an adequate, I feel, return for Chris Bryant and Baez and Rizzo and Kimbrel. Like getting Madrigal back. You know, you got a long-term starter at second base, even though he's injured and out the rest of the year. Vizcaino and Alcantara, like getting him back in the Rizzo deal. And the only thing that gives me a little pause about Vizcaino is he a starter? Is he a reliever? And he's already 24 and he's only at like the high A level. That's a bit of a concern. You know, Baez and Trevor Williams were packaged up to go get Pete Crow Armstrong. My initial reaction when I see that, plus defender with light power, his 19-year-old center fielder, I'm like, oh, great, we got a white left-handed version of Albert Almora for Baez. And then Chris Bryant getting Canario and Killian. Like, you know, Killian's probably a back end of the rotation 4-5 starter. You know, Canario has plus power, average speed, 21. You know, there's some chances that a couple of these guys could be like complementary or somewhat foundational pieces for that next contending team that you're trying to build in Chicago. That is certainly the case. And to be clear, just because you traded these guys away now, there certainly could be a strong case to be made that, hey, if you didn't think you were going to keep all of these guys, but you might have thought about re-signing one or two of them in the offseason as it is, then why not trade them now, get some pieces to replenish your farm system for the future, which you needed to do, and then you can bring back one or two of these guys like, what did it really hurt you in a lost season anyways? I totally get that. I totally get that. For me, as much as anything else, the painful thing about this is the whole Ricketts playing broke shit. It's the whole, we can't sit there and spend. We've lost money, blah, 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 and all this wham, wham, wham bullshit. Fucking billionaires talking about how they don't have money to spend. Cry me a freaking river. If anything, you know, go back to the Yu Darvish trade. Like, what did you get back there? Oh, it was a good one. Small market moves made by big market teams piss me the fuck off. And when you look at a team like this, you're playing in the third biggest media market in the country, third biggest city in the country. You should never be lower than 5th or 6th in payroll in a season. And like, I think it's like, when you go from 2015 to 2021, I think they only had 2 or 3 seasons that they were in the top 5 in payroll. Like, to me, this just sounds like the freaking Tribune Corporation all over again with new packaging and new visualization. You knew this was going to be the last season of your core. If you really cared about winning, you would have went all in to try and win now. Because tomorrow is not promised to anyone. You could try another rebuild. You don't have Theo there this time. This rebuild could be an absolute wet fart. And now we're back on the path to another 108 years until they win the next damn World Series. It's already bad enough you didn't truly, absolutely go balls deep all in to try and win more than one World Series when you should have been able to win a couple of them. That was your window of time for 2016 to 2018 or 19. Like, you make more moves and you do more shit. You could have won another World Series or two. Giving really bad contracts to Jason Hayward certainly doesn't help. But at the end of the day, the Chicago Cubs have no reason to not be playing big boy ball. And it's so often the case that we see with Chicago owners, time after time after time after time, when given the opportunity to play big boy ball or play small market ball, they choose the mediocrity mindset. They choose small market ball. Pisses me the fuck off. Like, if you knew this was going to be a possibility, why didn't you trade him in the offseason when your return could have been even larger? I know you're paying most of, if not all of Rizzo's remaining salary, so the Yankees going to have to eat it, and probably allowed you to get both of the prospects, both Vizcaino and Alcantara. But, you know, it's like you just dumped these guys because you wanted to save some money, and that's what this is all fucking about. It's just like the whole Theo Epstein era. And winning a World Series was a happy little accident. Yeah, I think it's cute when people say, Theo was brought in to rebuild it the right way and win a championship, and that was a priority. Bullshit! He was originally signed, whether you believe it or can see it or not, and based off of the Ricketts' recent actions, you should be more inclined to believe it. I've said it for a few years now. The only reason Theo Epstein was hired was so that way the Cubs could have an excuse to shed a couple $100 million in frickin' payroll to dump into Wrigley and Wrigleyville. That's what they did. Winning the World Series was a happy little fucking accident, but certainly was not the number one goal of the program. Don't ever confuse yourself. And when you look at their approach the past couple of years, when you look at their approach heading into this season, knowing that this was going to be the last season of this core fully intact, no matter what, you saw what they did. They played broke. And that's bullshit. So it's a painful day It's painful because it's a realization of an era that you knew was already over. It's painful because you know it could be the last time you ever see any of these three guys with Baez, Bryant, and Rizzo in a Cubs uniform ever again. Maybe one or two of them comes back. Maybe all three of them come back. Maybe one of them comes back. Maybe none of them comes back. We'll see what the future holds. But it's painful, but you also knew this was coming. So the emotions are kind of raw, but I think when you look at it, you're like, okay. To me, my bigger knocks are the fact of this is a rebuild, but you didn't go all the way. If you're going to do it, you got to go all the way. You can't freaking half-ass it. And then to sit there and go into this season, knowing this was going to be the last season, this core being intact and together, instead of doing what big market teams do, which is going all the way the fuck in to try and win another one, they cried broke and made small market moves to dump salaries. See you, Darvish. And to me, when you even look at the returns, like people are going to say, well, the return of prospects was solid. It probably could have been even more and could have been better. I'm just saying. We've seen other teams give up more for similar type of rentals. We've seen what, was given up to get a Jose Barrios by the Blue Jays. Like, you telling me the Cubs couldn't have got a somewhat similar package for Kyle Hendricks? Especially for a guy like him that, has some proven track record in the playoffs. He's a champion. Yeah, give me a fucking break. If you're going to rebuild, you go all the fucking way. That's, to me, as much as anything, the painful thing. Is this feels like Tribune Corporation, same old small market moves crap. We don't have enough money to be a big-time payroll player. We'll stay in the 10 to 12 or 13 range. So that way we could say we spend a lot of money, but relative to your market size, relative to your exposure and footprint in the baseball landscape and in the sports landscape, it's absolutely freaking pathetic! Pathetic! It sucks to see the end of an era. It sucks more to know that there are probably plenty of rough days ahead, plenty of Chicago mediocrity still to come out of Wrigley Field. I had that feeling for so many years. I didn't miss it, but I knew my mistress would be back eventually, and she certainly is now.